Welcome. We're doing Death of a Salesman, as you
Woo!
know. Yeah. So I recommended this one this week. And I read it like in high school, and not for high school, but in high school.
I read it for high school, and I gotta tell you, it slaps a lot differently as a 30-year-old than it does as a 15-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot pessimism. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, because like we are actually in that age of we're getting biffed right now, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so that's something to deal with. But anyway, what did you think of this object?
I thought it was solidly great, Like there's not like any page where I go, oh, and then I would cut this, I would trim that. I think it's solidly proportionally a fantastic play. I
And just for our audience, in case you're just indifferent to art and you just don't give a shit about reading things, we'll just summarize it.
still read Death of a Salesman. Just
Yeah,
do
like,
it.
like
It's
it's
important.
like this thing is fun, you know. Um,
It's
but
not that hard, and it's important for every American man, woman, and child to read at some point. It's a great work.
yeah, but no, I mean, but in case it's been a while, it's been a while
Yeah.
since we read it. Yeah, it's basically about a salesman, Willie Loman. He's having difficulties in his career. He's kind of losing his mind a bit, re- rewriting his history, and we get to see that a lot. And his two sons, Biff and Happy. Yes, his name is Happy. Um, they both get. They're both dealing with like their own disillusionment in their own lives and in not being the successes they wanted to be.
Hmm.
And that basically builds up through the play, resulting in, well, spoilers, the death of a salesman. Um, so anyway, all right. So where do we want to start here? Where do we
I
want
want
to
to start.
start,
I want to
Chris?
start with a quote by Nietzsche. Um, what was silent in the father speaks in the son, and often I found that the son was the unveiling secret of the father.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that,
uh, and I'm reading that because Happy and Biff are the keys to unlocking the madness or problems in the father in this play.
yeah. So Willie Loman, he's trying to enact the American dream. He wants to make something of his life. He wants it to add up to something big and meaningful.
Those typewriters aren't going to sell themselves or whatever
Yeah,
he
yeah.
sells.
Yeah. It's not actually clear to me what he sells. I don't
I, I
know.
think it's important that we don't have that
Yeah,
specified.
yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a level of specificity that's unnecessary and
Mhm.
distracting. Um, but okay, so he wants this, and his sons are just, well, one of them, Happy, is actually trying. Like he's trying to, like make his way. He's trying, to move his career forward, but he's not doing so well. As we find out towards the end of the play, it's like, yeah, it turns out he's just he's been lying about like what job he's had. He's not the assistant buyer. He's one of the two assistants to the assistant buyer, um,
Mhm.
which is embarrassing. And he's in general like, I mean, he's just a womanizer, and like there's this huge part of him that's like resentful of this
Yeah.
whole like thing he's doing here.
And it's really amazing that he can be so resentful and negative, and yet he plays basketball for the New York Mets.
Yeah, yeah, I found that
Whatever. I don't know anything
interesting.
about sports.
Um, no, no, it's just we get to see him seducing a woman.
Yeah,
It's
at the end he's seducing a woman, and it's mildly humorous, but it's more depressing. He's just completely doesn't give a fuck about the truth, and it's really like if you think about it, this play is about the truth and fantasy. Like the how I mean, those are a little too general. It's very specific how they work together, but Biff is so obsessed with uncovering the truth, and Happy is so obsessed with keeping up appearances. And in doing so, it doesn't really move anything along. Willie just kind of spins around in a sort of boredom. He spins around in a sort of knot where he always winds back at repetition.
well, it's he's furiously okay. Willie is furiously trying to reach success, and whether that's a real success, I mean, he's in sort of to protect that hope that he has of
Yeah,
having success, he has to lie to himself, and we get those. One of those magnificent things about this play, and I've never seen it done like this well or perfectly in other plays, is just the way like you sort of effortlessly move between the actual reality of the present day and like Willie and Biff and Happy talking to then Willie to Willie's like imagined world. Like how he likes to reconstruct the past, how he looks back on his when his son was a football star with three different colleges scouting him out.
yeah.
um, and how that those fantasies are like, first off, they're extravagantly lurid, almost like there's this crap and they're like, no, that did not happen. Of like Biff and Happy are in the living room and they're saying, and it just turns out like all of Biff's friends are down in the basement not knowing what to do, and he just says, oh, I don't need to bother with them, just tell them to go brush out the ashes under the stove. And like, what? What kind of god mensch are you imagining your son to be here? Like they're
It's
doing
like,
the laundry for everybody for the household. Why would high schoolers do your laundry? Do you have slaves?
yeah, it's like,
Jim Jones shit? Like what? Like that's almost how you're imagining this.
oh, I mean, it is, and it's also, I mean, and then Willie, he goes to towns and like I pictured hit like band parades greeting him in every town where he went as like his story of himself, and it's like it's just he's just selling shit. Like it's not like he's doing,
Well, the thing is like there's a it's it doesn't quite go that far with that, but it's like he feels like everybody likes him, as in
everybody likes him. Yeah, I'm well liked in Portland. I'm well, everywhere I go.
yeah, as in like you just yell out the name Willie Loman at a bar and they'll know who you're talking about. That's how highly you just walk into the store and they're interested in you. It's like that's not how it is. And the thing is that's great about the fantasy
Hmm.
is it's uncontrolled. He goes back and forth between the fabulous, extravagant, ecstatic fantasy to the miserly, depressed, entropic state of like, oh, the refrigerator's falling apart, and I barely made $17 in commission, and god damn it, someone should have made the Chevrolet illegal. It's falling apart so much, like so on.
Don't you just, it was so great, but also don't you want to say it's just that's just how it is? Like it's really good naturalism in the sense that like the stories we tell ourselves, they show up at times which are also related to the fantasy. The fact that you can't handle your life as, oh no, I'm doing this podcast out of like a small basement or something. No, I'll pretend it's us. We have millions of followers across the galaxy. Although actually, I think that we have much less of a ridiculous fantasy because we're just kind of reading and having a great time. But like whatever it is in your life or in my life where you notice the elements of fantasy enter. No, I'm going to be a great composer. No, I'm going to be a professor of the highest grade. Like it enters at these moments, and to defeat it, you to exit it is not anything that Willie is able to really do in this play. He can't actually exit it.
Well, this is getting into another issue, but about like, are these characters in control ultimately? Do they have volition, or are they deterministic objects? That's a question I want to dig into, and I have a mixed opinion about this. I'm not sure. Um,
I
but
mean, I think it's helpful to see the fact that like families can be this way, that like families can be this knot that just goes around in circles, and you don't have an external vantage point to come in and be like, hey, that's kind of crazy. Or, like, did you hear that with this? There's no external vantage point. Everyone is just involved in the subjective drama. There's no cool objective observer in this family, except maybe the wife.
well, one thing is we get to be that objective observer, and I
Right.
think Biff ultimately is like Happy's always lying to himself. He's lying to himself right up to the end. Willie, he never faces facts. Linda, it's a little more questionable what's going on with Linda, but I feel like Linda, the wife. But before that, I just want to say this comment about moving back and forth.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I take that more of like when your mind is out of control, when you're rewriting history, when you're not tethered to facts, um, then it's not just that you're, you it's not just that you're out of control like in reality, it's like you're out of control in your own mind. You can't stay in your fantasy. You know, you're gonna like go off and twist, like things are gonna peek on through and you're gonna find yourself in this really gnarled ugly place also.
Yeah.
And I can see like a schizophrenic like having moments of like pure ecstasy and of like, yes, the world is coming out of my eyes. It is just an exteriorization of my conscious desires. You know, like feeling that at one moment and like mad with power, almost megalomaniac, and then switching to, well, the sort of the more predominant emotion with schizophrenics, which is existential terror, of world calamity imminent, of
Yeah.
paranoia.
Existential, not in the sense of existential philosophy, but existential as like table,
Well,
chair,
as
like
in my
real,
existence,
like reality. Yeah.
my existence will be obliterated.
Yeah, like actual reality is at stake.
Yeah.
Um,
So like that's how I take it, is like, yeah, like Willie Loman's mind is unhinged fundamentally.
yeah, in Lacanian theory, they that we don't need to use these terms, of course, but it's just kind of a good moment. They call it the slippage of the signifier. Things kind of signify certain things, and then they start slipping everywhere. And the only thing to pick up on for us there is Willie's slippery. It's, oh, we're here. Oh, we're in the past. Oh, wait a minute. Now we're back and Uncle Ben's music's playing with its silly flute or whatever. Which we'll talk about in a moment with the music. But yeah, it's slipping everywhere. And where it rests, it's not that it's slipping everywhere. It does come to rest. It comes to rest on his, fantastic view of the past as one place where we get some at least stability, even if it's not real. He can lie to, that's the lie, but he really, there's only a couple moments in the entire play where he gets to the truth.
Yeah, it's not so much he's getting to the truth as the truth is just trampling at him. Like,
Like the truth, he's being attacked by the truth.
yeah, as in, you know, as in like, you know, the when finally you see like, well, what exactly happened in Boston that like threw Biff? It's like presumably he was, and like it's described this way, of like he's just yammering to himself in the men's room stall at a restaurant. You know, it's
Yeah.
like that's where it happens. He can't escape this memory. That's what it looks like, and afterwards, like he's bonkers. He goes out and buys seeds for a garden that gets no light. What is he doing? Um,
Well, that's the little I took that type of stuff as well. First of all, um like when people go crazy, there's a weird trope in Western literature of people planting shit. I don't know why, but this actually does show up as like a weird back to nature in Bridgerton season 2. The guy is, it's a portrayal of Mad King George, and he's like calls himself the gardener. And then like there is a little bit of a history there. And I find it to be great. I just think it's a magical image of him gardening. I think it's great.
no,
I don't
it's
know.
great. It's
Yeah.
great because it does two things. One is that like that's, he wants to succeed. He wants to
Mhm.
create. He wants to have something he can hold in his hand, as Ben puts it. Um, but it's also simultaneously, you can't do that. You know, like literally, like the apartment buildings are stopping the you getting from enough light to do that. Like that's
Yeah, you
not
can't do it.
possible.
Well,
Um,
and then I also think that there's hints throughout that Willie, like, okay, let's be super clear. At any point, any of these people could have become farmers or done something else. What's like, like they could have done anything. What's holding them to is the fantasy and the dream and all these things. Like, there's all these moments to say, hey, you could have been a blank. Like, when at the end, Willie's offered a job. He's like, I've been offering you jobs for you at any point. Come get a job. It's
And
like there's
he was literally, begging his current and then former
yep,
boss, like, just $50 an hour, just $40 an hour. That's all we need. And like, and then like the is Charlie's offering him literally that.
literally
Um,
that. And then the other guy, Biff only gets into trouble because of some mommy daddy issues with the stealing. It's always connected to, I'm sorry, not mommy daddy issues connected to dad. But other than that, it's like, yeah, go do cattle shit. Like it would be fine. Like in another family, like if I was like, I'm gonna go be a farmer, my parents would be like, well, that's weird, but okay, like, see ya. There's this, it's not what I want to say is that in this play, it's a critique of the American dream. Like we're not doing a critique of modes of production. It's like there has to be, to really critique the dream, in reality other opportunities for these characters to go do that the dream is preventing them from doing.
yeah, in the play's perspective, it's the American illusion. Um,
Yeah.
and okay, so
Because like Willie really wants to like he works on the house and he can, there's all these things that are connected to reality that bring him happiness that aren't the dream, like
yeah,
building.
and that's what his wife says, is that it's that he did a good job of what's the word, as in he's put more work into the porch steps than he ever did in any of his business deals.
And
Yeah.
he can't see that as like value in a sense. He can only see this other thing as valuable.
Yeah, so let's actually define this a bit. Like, what do we mean by the American dream, and what the play means by the American dream? Those things might differ.
Let's do the play because there's, I mean,
Uh,
it's a
well,
large
like,
fucking topic.
the conventional view of the American dream, and I think
Uh-huh.
this is basically the right view, and probably what the play is saying, I guess, um, is that like, okay, if you work hard, you can succeed and have a reasonable standard of living and work that's basically satisfactory. Like that, I think that's a good vision of the American dream. Like you can come from nowhere and end up supporting yourself in a respectable, satisfactory fashion.
I think that's the immigrant American dream. I think
Yeah,
that's more specifically like a migrant comes in from a family that's like war torn or gang ridden or some other place that they, or they, they were an opposition member to political violence or sexual violence or whatever, and they get here and they can support their family without resorting to bad methods and whatever. And because that's the American dream in a sense of like the good. I would say that that's like a good thing
yeah, no,
is you can,
I believe in that American dream. I think it's
but I
fantastic.
don't think that's, I don't, I think there's like, if you have a coin, that's the top side. That's the lucid, that. The obscene underbelly of that is what Willie Loman is dealing with.
Yeah, he wants to
There's
be
the
a
flip
six.
side of that where it flips over and something totally flips in what that is.
Yeah, let's see. And what exactly is his sort of, I guess, imagine, neurotic, or what exactly is his conception? It's something along the lines of he wants to be well liked. He wants people to enjoy. He looks to this one salesman, who's like older than him, that he met early on in his career, as like, oh, he just all he does is call people up, and he can do that in his slippers, and like there was a, and like, when he died, like, things were sad on trains all throughout the country. um
Sorry.
it's a little bit.
Out of context, this sounds like a terrible play, but no, it's a fucking great play. That's part of the
Yeah,
fantasy.
you believe in Willie when he's talking about this.
I feel bad for Willie. Willie's all of us at different points in our lives. It's Willie, but okay, what the American dream is for Willie is something, I would call it a fantastic, impossible object. It's not like, not all facets of it can be true at the same time. Like it can't, the way it operates in his mind is is basically sublime. Like you, everyone will like you. You're the go-to guy for all these different things. You're good at something, but the training for it is obscure and random. It's not like going to be a mathematician where you like learn a bunch of fucking facts and history, like you it's how to think. It's not like getting a music degree or doing a thing in a trade. It's kind of even expertise in this field is tied to kind of magical thinking, really.
Yeah, yeah, actually, he literally says about saying to Biff in one of his fantasy memories that it doesn't matter what you know, it matters who you know. He says essentially
Right.
that, and
Yes.
it's like he's not. And like one thing that is interesting is like a big contrast is success is possible in Miller's universe. The Bernard, Biff's friend in high school, who works hard and is real smart, he ends up arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court. Like that's presented in the play that he does that. It's mentioned. It's like you
Yeah.
can do something impressive, but
Well, this isn't Steinbeck. This isn't Steinbeck during the Depression where we're critiquing some like economic situation. This is you can go and have a job. Like the message of this play is not that there's like not work or something. That's that would ruin the message, which is that something about the ideological structure holds one back from just going and getting a job in carpentry. Like like Willie would be probably happy just like building steps for people, and he'd make a fine money, and everything would be fine, and then there'd be no play. Something
yeah,
about the
I think
dream
like
has to hold it
Biff's the
all back.
same way. Like
Yeah.
as in he just talks about like, there's nothing more beautiful than seeing a mare with her whatever the child version of horses. Um, it's like it's so
Oh,
beautiful seeing that in the spring. Like he says that, and it's like that's nice. I'm glad you like that. But he's constantly harassed by like when springtime comes around, I'm seeing all this. I just feel like, damn it, I'm 34 years old and I'm only making $12 an hour or whatever the
you're
amount.
like, who cares? And I know many people who go their whole lives earning minimum, not minimum wage, but like a wage, live in an apartment, and they're fine because there's not that ideological structure. There's not that fantasy there. It's not.
Yeah,
Although I want to critique what I'm saying just a little bit because I'm in the play. It critiques what I'm saying as well because Charlie near the end says, "No man only needs a little salary," and it's a fucking great line.
let's see. Yeah, like that is a good line. I'm just thinking about like, one thing I just want to say here is the way you're putting in terms of ideology, which I think is like a good point. The way that I use slightly different language though of Willie's problem and Biff's problem and Happy's problem is they're second-handed on a certain level of their vision of what success looks like. Is in second-handed, like that's the Ayn Rand term for you're putting other people's opinion of you above like what you actually want. So Willie, he just wants other people to like him, which you can understand why. Like it's nice being liked, but that's what he's about. Like Happy and Biff are like they're upset they're making so little money, and Happy in particular envies the hell out of the executives who are making more than him. Um, he's not. They're not putting it. They're not putting it in terms of like, well, what actually would make my life happy? What actually is work that's satisfying to me? It's just I just want to fit in on some level. Um,
Yeah, I think that's the interpersonal element of it for sure. And I think that like in the way you're talking about it, that's different from ideology, which is from above, messages from above,
no, no, I
force.
think that's where the message is. Like that's where the message is coming in. It's coming in the form of you better care about what other people think. You better be a pillar of the community. You better be someone who's on top of the dog pile.
Oh, okay, yeah. Just
So
the
like
big that's
yeah,
this
as
is
in I'm just saying like it's like there's this ideology of second-handedness. There's ideology of you better look out for who's on top.
yeah, like when to give you to steel man what you're saying, like when Biff comes back, it's like, oh, we're looking for the head of the company, which is Papa. Dad's the head of the company of the family to Biff.
Yeah.
And like He's like 34. He's an adult. Like, go be an adult somewhere. Just, you know, there is we Ray and I had a long talk about two concepts in Lacan. One is acting out, and the other is passage to the act. And I focused on passage to the act as being rather positive, but it can be whatever it is. What it is an exit from the symbolic situation. And so that's the suicide of Willie at the end is he sees that he's standing alone. You notice at the end, remember he finally realizes he's fully alone
Mm.
and then kills himself. And that is categorically the concept of the passage to the act. He
I'm not. Let's
exits.
see. Let's just think about that. So let's just define our terms
Yeah.
again. So acting out is basically you're not you're committing actions sort of in spite of other things that are done onto you. It's as in
Yeah,
it's
like
like,
let's say Anna and I have are on the fritz and like I'm like, oh, Anna would love it if I made dinner tonight, but I'm not gonna and I'm gonna go play hockey. And
well, I mean, like the classic example is a child literally acting out, as in
child literally acting out.
their parents are getting a divorce, so they're acting out in school and causing trouble. That's
Right.
how you'd put it.
Whereas the passage to the act is a full exit from the symbolic order. So like the acting out, you're still using language. Like you're like in the interpersonal situation with the other person. Like even if you do something horrible and kill yourself with a knife while looking at them going, "Look at what you made me do." I mean, that's really horrible, obviously, but that would be acting out. When it's on your own, it's the other one. When you're really on your own.
Well, I'm not really sure if he's on his own in this situation though, in Willie's suicide. He does it explicitly so that he can, in a sense, be a success, as in so that his family will have the $20,000 of his life insurance, and so that he can have.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, like so that's it's not like
Ah.
he's very much living. He's very much just following the symbolic order in that sense.
Maybe the problem with this play is actually that it is all acting out. Like
Well,
if this
a
was
good example of
actually
acting out. Okay,
area, we'd not have a play.
well, like a good example of acting out. I mean, two different examples. One is Happy, just sleeping with the fiancés and wives of executives. As in, he resents this system. He resents trying to make it in the world in this very inauthentic way. So he ruins the women that they sleep with. He does it in that very scalp gathering, notch cutting fashion.
And
Um,
actually, by the way, it hasn't aged a moment. That was still rather ugh. Like it's an older play, but it's not. In a sense, this is a very modern play.
yeah,
This is like wouldn't you could do this today with updating some of the language and not change anything. Just make them hedge fund people.
yeah, you can imagine. And then another example of acting out is like Biff. He can't stand the idea of not being the boss around places. He wants that automatic success that he was trained to believe in high school.
Yeah,
So
very
he
typical.
always steals stuff.
Yeah.
When he's on a job, like he stole those basketballs when he was at the wherever it was. Um, he steals that fountain pen from the boss. It's just trivial. I mean, it's literally it is on that childlike scale of acting out.
I think you're exactly right.
I don't know what funny about. Um,
Well,
yeah,
you're right in the way where I don't have anything else to add.
yeah, like no, that's why it's funny. That's just why
Like,
it's funny.
yep, that was it. But I think so. Looping to something that we want to talk that we've been actually talking about indirectly the whole time. Can these characters get out of
Yeah,
this situation? The family life, the ideology, the second-handedness. It's a great phrase. And like, can they actually do it?
Well, Biff does. Biff actually does.
Mhm.
He isn't just the victim of the ideology. He's struggling with it. He's going back and forth about it. He's thinking about telling the truth. He's thinking about lying, and then at the end, he's finally like, "Look, Dad, you and I, we can't get along because you're this way and I'm this way." And he's honest about it. So it feels like he does have control over himself here.
I mean, and it also is, I mean, it's not the whole thing, obviously, but it does help when you can tell the truth.
Yeah,
Like it puts Biff as our main double, like the person we're like following in the play, who at least has a grasp on fucking reality. He's not fully caught up in the bullshit.
yeah. Now here's a good contrast for us is to Long Day's Journey into Night. Because Long Day's Journey, like that is a play. I mean, actually, there's a lot of sort of similar sort of relationships going on, as in like Jamie and Happy are very similar characters in the way they're sort of degenerate in a certain sense and not really dealing with things in a healthy way. Edmund and Biff are more like trying to do something, and they have some kind of positive vision. Edmund much more so because he's a genuine genius writer. He's just Eugene O'Neill. Well, Ed,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
but like, and Biff is like, he gets a few things to say. He gets a few smart things to say that are good. He's not a poet, but he's fine. Um, but I want to say about it is,
Well, he doesn't have the yeah. Sorry, keep going.
yeah, is that with the O'Neill play, it's like, yeah, these characters are out of control. These characters are not masters of their own fate here. Uh, it, with Miller's characters, I don't feel that way. I
Yeah,
even Willie. I'm even willing to say Willie to me. He's deeply evasive, but he's choosing to evade. He's going insane, but there's part of him that's like committed to that insanity. That's making it something he's following. As in, like compare like the way the father in Long Day's Journey to Night is a skinflint. And he knows he's a skinflint at certain moments, and then in the same sentence he'll contradict himself. And he's like, he'll go back to being exactly what he is. And Jamie is the same way of like, yeah, kid, I love you, but I'm doing everything I can to undercut you. You stay away from me, and I'm gonna, and he will do that as soon as he sobers up. He's gonna be like that, Jamie. He has no control over his actions.
right.
Willie, it does feel like no, if he just decided to let go of that dream, which he could do, if he just decided to face facts and change his mind, he would not have killed himself. He would have had a good job. That would have been fine. He would have been happy with his wife. He would have done little carpentry tasks. He would have some. Maybe he would have been kind of broken as a human being
Yeah,
thereafter, but he would have had something.
I think I think you're right. I think that's the difference between Eugene O'Neill and Miller, both of which I think are just the best. I don't I don't have any critiques. So
Well, I will say I think O'Neill is better, but I think
I
Miller's
have
still great.
I'm wondering if it's personal, but I also think that right now. I have to read more of their plays.
I
The
actually
Eugene O'Neill was just
funny.
perfect.
It's funny for me of like Miller. I sort of agree with his attitude a bit more. Like I'm more like yeah, okay, volition, free, like they have control themselves. That's great. I'm more on that side.
Oh, like I wouldn't be here in a certain sense without having some beliefs like that.
Yeah,
you know.
but O'Neill is just so much more intellectual and profound that it's like I'm. At least in certain aspects, I'm almost more at home with it
Well, it's
because of
more like O'Neill is the grand spectacle of human subjectivity. Like it is the work of human. And like Miller is like, hey, no, we're gonna do something here. Like we're in the mud. We're gonna like, you can change your life. Whereas like, you know, do you watch the Oresteia and go, yes, I can change my life? No, you're watching the spectacle of humanity as a whole. Like it's a drama that plays out on a cosmic level, and that's not Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller is trying to say, hey, you don't have to have that. Whatever, it's a more of a message and not like I think great art can have a like moral message, and I think that's fine, and it doesn't bother me. But the greatest works of art like display the spectacle of human life. It's not there's something beyond, just like having some sort of message or something.
Well,
And
it's
Neil reaches that place a little more, possibly.
well, I mean, the goal of art, in my view, is to convey some attitude about the universe. Some like this is what I think's important. Now that doesn't mean like, oh, you go outdoors and you then follow this thing I laid down. It's not like that where it's like, oh yeah, maybe like Dole's house. Like, oh yeah, maybe women should like have more autonomy. Like pursue careers. Like that's kind of the moral of the Doll's house. Like that's great, but like that's not like the message isn't. It's fine if it's there, but that's not what makes it great. What makes it great is like, oh, I have this whole view about how human beings work, about what their souls are like, about the role of ideas in their lives, about
Yeah.
how they talk and think and interact and don't interact, and like that's what's important. And O'Neill does that more. You get a more complete picture of human beings. And it's also just more profound. Like I don't know, his fucking characters are talking about Stendhal and Nietzsche. Like that's
They're
great.
cool. They're nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, but abstracting just a little bit, and of course, I'm betraying my my values when I go to certain reference points and that have an impact. But I've literally seen like people teach like Antigone with like who's right. Like oh, let's look at Antigone's values and see. And I'm like, what? Like the spectacle of Antigone is her steadfastness. It's not like this arguing of morals. Like that is obviously that's a part of it, but like that's one part. But the grand dimension of it is Antigone's uh being a rock. And that's what I would argue for that.
Yeah, let's see. On that one, I'd say it's really great to go in and look at characters and feel like, okay, what are they about? What do they believe in? And how do you stand for or against this? Like that's a very important thing to do. It's not the whole of art, but I think actually, I mean, I like that exercise. It's just you also need to recognize there's also other things beyond that. If it's hey, it's the kind of world where this kind of conflict exists. Like Ibsen is very much this way, where like you have these very clear characters that represent different worldviews, and they're conflicting with each other. And you should actually ask yourself, like, hey, am I for Dr. Stockman? Am I for Mrs. Alving? Like, or am I against them? And or some mixture of the two. Like I think that's a great exercise. I think that's a big part of art. I just
Just sort of layers, like that's one layer and then a deeper
Yeah,
layer.
yeah, and it's like I guess you almost want to, I don't know, do your like, I don't know, I'm gonna use like Kierkegaard words, but they're not relevant. It's like,
That's fine.
okay, it's like you have like, I don't know, you can almost say like you have the entertainment level of like, oh well, that's an interesting story, and then you have the ethical level of, oh yeah, this is, there's these different possible things you could be in life, and then it's like the aesthetic level of, this is life, this is the kind of place we live in.
Yeah. And I think that with Arthur Miller, we're more at that second level a lot
Yeah.
with like, when we talk about their choices in instead of an interplay of the gods. It's like but I think that like I think Biff can get out because I think just retroactively it's the way the play is interesting. It's like this play isn't really that interesting if no one has agency in the way we want them to. Because then they're just little automatons that are at different rhythmic patterns, and then they bump into each other, and oh, they bumped, and then it reset the first automaton back to fantasy, and like because Willie really does act like an automaton, like he or a robot, like oh, when insert code a word, oh, retreat back to fantasy, and he does, but he doesn't always behave like a robot. And that little bit of agency is what makes it great, I think.
Well, it's interesting. To what extent is Willy Loman goal oriented? I would say there is a certain sense of like, yeah, here's a man out of control because he's literally out of control of his mind a lot of the time. Like he's literally out of his mind. He's yammering in the bathroom.
Right.
Um, but in a big way to me, it strikes me as there's still him committed to this ideal. And like, okay, now he's part of that ideal, part of that fantasy is driving him insane. He's losing his
Toward,
mind. Like that, like it's sort of like
towards
it's
death.
yeah, it's chore. What would be
Suicide.
yeah, it's driving him towards that, but it's like this is the thing though, is like it's this is the fruit, as in when he tells when he talks to his son and gets him, oh, yeah, yeah, I go ask for that, $15,000 loan, and don't know it's set a dollar less. It's like that's a fantasy right there. He's
Yeah.
enacting that fantasy. It strikes me as yeah, he's in control, Willie Loman. He's in control in a certain sense, and because he keeps directing himself in this very bad direction, he is losing all control.
It's like so there's a Bob's Burgers episode where Bob is really obsessed with these like little airplane machine gun things, and they're like little models, and he gets shot with one by some guy or whatever, and it doesn't really matter, but he gets really mad, and so as revenge he wants to go destroy his airplane. And then it turns into this giant neighborhood battle, and the entire time he's like, it's not about the planes, it's about the principle of it. But by the end he's like hanging off a building and everything's gone to shit and it's completely gnarly, and he's like, it's about the principle, as he's like falling down. And there is an aspect of, on a more general level, like, if instead of treating his ideals as ideology, you treat them as just ideals, Willie Loman, that it's his it's a certain stubbornness that keeps leading him to where he is.
Yeah, yeah, it is that stubborn rejection of the facts. Um,
Which is hard. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, this is where it does sort of matter what you do in the world. Like, so I'm a composer, right? And the fantasy is totally different because like I make new things. Like I bring something into existence. Whereas in someone like a salesman perspective, it's a different, he's kind of talking almost like he's gonna bring some new thing into the world. And so it's weird. It's a little different.
well, one thing about the whole salesman aspect is, I think a salesman can be like bringing something new into the world if he approaches his job properly. Where it's like, okay, I actually do think because when you're a salesman, you're basically it's education technically. It's like I'm trying to tell you about this product, and I'm trying to show you that this product would actually improve your business, improve your life if you were to use it.
I work at a bookstore. I sell books. I'm a
Yeah,
bookseller
yeah,
with my
yeah,
job.
yeah. You're
I
a
am a
salesman. Yeah.
uh, and like I believe in my product because I am selling books. But then I like go home and want to write books. I don't. There,
Well, like there are people there could be your people who are like, yeah, I really like books, but I could never write good ones. And they're like, yeah, like but I'm happy to like just share with people like this is how it goes. And like I think the same thing could happen with like vacuum cleaners. So like, okay, like for people with a certain income bracket or range, this is a good vacuum cleaner for them.
okay.
Um, like that's something you can like it's not like okay this is the most romantic job in certain capacities, but it's like no, like I mean I've known people, or at least no I know I know at least some people have heard of it, like yeah, like they like I know secondhand, where it's
I
like
mean,
yeah,
look,
it's like they're just happy to like yeah, like I didn't expect to like someone with dishwashers, but dishwashers, washing machines. But it's like, yeah, but it, I don't know, it gets interesting after a while, and you
Isn't
should.
this just the same point that we're making again, which is that the fantasy, the ideology, the whatever it is something laid on top of bare life? It's something extra. It's not like someone can't go out and be happy just selling stuff and then going home and eating a meal. Like I think where it's a problem is I think the key is in that quote. Like, no man's happy just selling, or what is it? Just making a little income. Like there's something really big about Willie's desire. Like his sense of desire is so over the top and it doesn't really match what he's doing.
Yeah, as in, he talks about Biff, um, as a young, like when he's like his wife is like, oh, it sometimes takes a while for a man to like figure out where he's going, and they just have disabilities with themselves, and he just says some, and Willie says like, oh, just like Edison or Andrew Carnegie, one of them had to deal with being deaf. And like that's a little too ambitious for Biff. Um, you know,
Well, no, I
um,
mean, you ever get the feeling when someone writes famous quotes that they know they're writing the famous quote? Like when Biff is like, you and I are not great men on the world or whatever, it's like I almost feel like Miller was like, and here is where I will make my great quote. You know, but it's true, like we're not great men on the earth or whatever. And in the same sense that okay, like for me, I just left the academy and now I'm doing kind of odd jobs and really working on music and having fun. And like I only realized after leaving that like parts of being faculty were more fantasy than what I actually wanted. Like oh my god, my faculty advisor hasn't written a piece of music in 3 years because she's too busy with her workload. Well, that's stupid. No title is worth that. But like during the degree, there's sort of this fantasy that I had of like, oh, and I'll just get a job and I'll have a house and everything will be fine. And when I left, I went, oh, like I didn't actually want most of those end goal things. What I really want to do is have time to write music. And it's like, oh, well, fuck, you can just do that. And I think there is like an exit there, much less than obviously anything happening in a play, but there was a little bit of confronting a certain dream which I realized I didn't actually want. And that would be what Willie had to do at some point, would be to say, like, oh, I don't even want this end goal or thing. I don't even like people, would be a really helpful thing for Willie to come to realize.
yeah, like this
Or
is
something. That was a long ramble, sorry.
no, no, no. I think that that was completely relevant. It was that's something that I think a lot of people like. This is like what's interesting is like this isn't just a problem for. Okay, one thing I think Miller is actually like, yeah, there's a certain kind of white collar work that's just inherently frustrating in his mind. At least that's my feeling from the play. Like there isn't a good kind of salesman. Like that's my feel. I don't know if that's Miller's view, but that's my guess. But regardless, this is still a problem that people have. And like you bring it up as academia, that's extremely relevant. It's like I think a lot of people who go into academia are like, yeah, like I'm going to be the next Bohr, or I'm going to be the next Einstein, or the next Lavoisier, or whatever. And they're more thinking about like this other fantasy they're projecting onto things, or
Yeah.
at least like, yeah, I want to be a distinguished professor who's important and well respected in the field and who gets lots of citations. Like when people say my name at a faculty luncheon, they know who they're talking about, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
uh, so that's something that is a real problem, and people aren't just sort of dealing with like, well, what are my actual values and what can I have? And I will just mention as just an aside, I know what Miller is doing. I just feel like it's making outside labor it romanticizes that a little too much.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes, it does. It sets up this binary because Biff is our hero, where we're following him because he has at least some control over facts. But where he makes his fantasy is the exit into like a Brazil like other terrain where the grass grows long on the range. And it's like, okay, but that's also just like fucking farming.
Well,
You know?
yeah. Well, the thing is, he's done farming. He likes farming. He likes,
Yeah.
Colts and whatever. Like, so it's not a fantasy for him. It's a fact. But one really shouldn't feel like, oh, being blue collar, that's honest, good, hearty work that's spiritually fulfilling. No, it can be for some people, but
Yeah,
no, it
this is
can
just
just
like a
suck.
subjective thing, right? Like this isn't really like a concrete like humans should farm.
Yeah, like that. Like
Because once
that's
you say
that, that's
that,
getting
then
a little fascist, if you don't mind me
like a
saying.
little pole potty, right? Like, you and the universities usually need to go farm this land with no knowledge of how to do it. I also think that the opposite is the same thing. It's like no one, well, I wonder that about like I think Miller means something different when salesman when I don't think he means the job of selling an object. Like I have a book, I believe in books, and I want you to buy them.
Mm.
Because that's not really interesting. I mean, it's fine. It's my life. But it's not like, I can recommend you books that are more spiritually fulfilling or whatever. But like and I think that's like ethical salesman type stuff in a certain sense. It's like, sure, go you believe in it, life's good. There's really nothing left for me to write about in some sort of essay anywhere. But in this is where it's really important that there isn't an object. Salesman as such, instead of salesman of washing machines. Because I think Miller's critique is that a salesman is basically someone who's lying to themselves to begin with. They're selling you
Yeah,
a
yeah.
broken
As
wash.
in, I think what he's tapping into is like our sort of the cultural thought of a salesman, or like used car salesman is like the worst
Yeah,
example. But you can have other variants. Like, I once had a neighbor when I was growing up who was he was a very successful salesman, but it was like his kind of sales was like, yeah, you bring the clients onto the boat to go fishing with them, and they like you, and then they buy from you. That was his kind of salesmanship.
like a golf course
Yeah,
business meeting type thing.
and
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
that's just that kind of strikes me as a bit sleazy.
Well, isn't
Um,
this so like where this critique functions today from Miller would not be like migrants in a field wanting a better salary. That has like nothing to do with it. Where it would be is like, have you read about these hedge fund people that make like not even that much money in New York who work like 100 hours a week and they're always like encouraged to work like, Wolf of Wall Street type people, but they don't even get anything out of it. They don't get promoted. They just work themselves to death and then they die. And it's like, well, why are they doing that? Like and it has to be
Yeah,
fantasy.
like it's pot. Like, I think that finance is a perfectly legitimate career that a lot of people can be excited about. That's very productive, and it's like it's important to figure out like where should loans be made, and like is
I
this
mean,
stock doing
I want
well?
to have my financial advisor. So
Yeah,
yeah,
like it's a very important field, but you can
that's
take
not what we're talking about though. We're not
yeah,
talking
yeah, no, 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 but,
about
but
totally.
that's the point I'm making is like, yeah, but you're taking
Yeah,
it the wrong way. Just like being an academic is a great thing if you're taking it the right
yeah.
way. Um, you know, and being a farmer is a fine thing, but you can be taking it the wrong way and be like some kind of Tucker Carlson conservative who feels like, I'm so much better than all those city-bound urban liberals with my fucking sheep. Like that can be your attitude, and that's a toxic.
There's Tucker Carlson in like an apartment with his Tesla or whatever.
Yeah,
No,
what
no,
a, what
I
a
think you're right, but I also think there's an aspect where I think what's horrifying about Miller is if we give Willie Loman agency, then his death becomes, oh my God, I just made like the stupidest point. I was about to say his death becomes like suicide.
well, no, I think that's a good point, actually.
But
No,
like the fantasy is what's leading is
no, no,
ultimately for the
as in
suicide.
no,
Yeah.
as in like you can have it where like I don't know, I can't think of like a good example that's off the top of my head, but you could have like a Eugene O'Neill where like he has a character who's like fundamentally out of control, like because of this is just what society is telling him to do, and there are certain logical consequences that leads to, and it results in him finally killing himself. And actually, it makes sense in like an O'Neill play to say, well, yes, that character literally committed suicide, but it was actually a murder by society, um,
Exactly.
or the murder by his abusive mother. It's that sort
Right.
of thing. Like, and what we can say, and like here, it's like no, like Loman, no, he wasn't murdered by the American dream. He killed himself. Like he could have rejected that his false neurotic view of this view and moved on with his life.
Yeah, I think that's why it's not called the American Dream. I mean, obviously that would be a weird title for a play, and it is the title of a great play, but that play's funny as hell by Edward Albee. But like the problem with calling it that would be like, well, like this is a critique of a certain facet of American ideology. It's like this version of the ideology is best kept believed at a distance. Like it's when you bring it up close and you're like, yes, I am the salesman who does the thing, is when it begins to become ridiculous.
Well, it's the question mark to me is like my view, like this
Yeah.
is my view, is I think, yeah, American Dream, that's great. Just, understand the correct context, know your limitations, know what's, you can achieve in your life. And like don't think you can be Thomas Edison if you don't have evidence to believe that.
A rational, boring belief, right?
No,
It's like
I'm saying like,
that's
it's
a
great. No,
rational point.
you should fervently believe in the American dream, though, on that level, in that context.
Okay.
And but my difference is, it's not clear to me whether Miller is like fundamentally like, oh yeah, like I do believe in the American dream. I just think it's really misunderstood by a large chunk of people. There's evidence in the text to say that because that one kid ends up becoming a very successful lawyer because he worked hard in school. Um, so like there's evidence for that. They're like, no, there's a positive, real version of the American dream. Or
Well,
is
it's
it,
different when your dream is to like have a family and have income to support them as the end point of the dream, right? I
and
would
like
put
and
that.
like and like work that you're basically satisfied with? Like work that like means something to you. That's a
I
big
think
part of it.
there's something about American ideology, though, that is inherently excessive. Manifest destiny, like to the ends of the earth, the imperialism. That there's something about America. Um, Sometimes it's in the individualism and it's excessive. I think there's a component always of excess in like in other places like China, it would be the ideological function would be totally different. I think in America, the ideological component is, I think there is an excessive,
I
I
would
don't want to say an
say
excessive excess to it
now,
that he's critiquing here.
now I what I'd say that might be his conception that it's like inherently excessive. Um, I'm not sure. I mean, and since I don't know enough about, I don't know, the whole American culture and its history and how the American dream's been thought of exactly. I'm not a historian of this sort of thing. But I will say there is something great about being excessive in the right sense of like having boundless ambition, of like looking and feeling like, God, like there's just the frontier that I'm going to conquer. There's no.
Walt Whitman, grab your pork, grab your, what is it? Grab your pitchforks, come, young men, and tell you. That's a great poem. Yeah. There is something. Well, yeah, obviously I agree. I'm a very
I just
excessive
want to.
person and very American. I also just think that I think that I think that excess is, so you would agree there is some
No,
excess
no, like,
there, whether it's good or
you
negative.
can take it the wrong way. But if you're taking it in a very concrete, bound kind of way, and you're like Thomas Edison or bust, I have, then that's a problem. And you can also have like wrong because most people just are not that genius. Most people just can't be that kind of industrial magnate because very few people are that brilliant.
Or lucky. I mean, God, some of the times, like, look at all the luck that goes into
Well,
becoming
yeah,
a
I mean, I'm gonna say
million.
yeah. Like there's a component to like luck there, um, but like there's a component of like yeah, like you just well, part of the luck is like yeah, you just were born and you didn't get enough stimulation from the ages 1 to 5. So, no, like that's a serious thing. Like
Is that our Trump thought? It's like Trump got lucky and he was like really bored and he's like
no, no, I feel like he got too little stimulation, probably, or the worst kinds. Um,
well, because doesn't Trump embody a
he
related type of
Yeah,
excess?
he embodies a very look. Everything good can be perverted. Science can be some is fantastic and wonderful, but you can pervert it into like Nazi racial science, and like you can make it total bullshit. You can take something good and turn it into something bad, and like there is something of like yeah, the positive ambitiousness and boundless optimism, you can turn that into something like perverted, and that perversion can be since very typical like in the culture.
Yeah, it's not going to take a multiplicity of forms. It's going to take a couple forms, and
Yeah,
Trump is one
or
of
just
those.
like one predominant form, and you can basically Sam Harris is right to say there's something especially American about Trump's brand of perversity. Like there
Right,
is,
and I think it relates to Arthur Miller's use of the word salesman. Because
yeah,
what's Trump selling is just like his ego. He's not, he was not really good at making steaks or whatever. And in fact, it ruins the magic to even reference a product. Who cares? There's no product. It's Trump.
yeah. No, I think it's a good choice. I think it's an excellent choice because salesman is one of these careers where it is very intangible. What you're actually producing. Um, so it's very hard. So it's like it's a profession where it's like it's very easy to lose track of what's the actual value that I'm creating, and I'm not sure. And I mean, I gave that little defense of salesmanship of no, it's like education, like you're adding value to people's lives, but the thing is like I don't think 90% of salesmen think of it that way. Like I don't think they have that kind of defense at the ready, and I think there's a large percentage of salesmen who aren't that way, who are more slippery.
I think,
Um,
and I also think that, ooh, I don't think this was a great movie, but just structurally, The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith
and
is like the exact opposite of this one. Like Will Smith, like rises to the occasion, right? And that might be why it wasn't very good.
well,
But like,
I mean, things can just not be very good just on the level of, the characterization wasn't that great, the dialogue wasn't so sharp, editing, I don't know, like that's like when I think about that movie, I just feel it's like it wasn't that great just on like that level of yeah, B minus performance, fine. I didn't forget it, which is something.
Will
Um,
Smith is always a great actor in the best part of like a lot of his movies. It's like, well, at least it had Will Smith. It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
the
That actually
acting
is
of Will Smith is the only thing that saves like half of his movies.
actually that is like yeah. That movie would have been probably nothing without Will Smith. But yeah,
It
it's
would have been amazing with Nick Cage. It would have been so weird. I can't even picture that movie with Nicolas Cage. Sorry, I'm off topic, but
no. I
I think we kind of
let's have Nick. Let's cast Nick Cage for Willie Loman. Um. Anyway, back to
the
business.
puppies. It's like the car. Okay, I don't know. I
Let's have
think
M
at
Night
this point I
Shyamalan
don't.
direct.
Yeah, I think I've, as you can tell just by the implication of where my words are going, I think I've said everything I believe on this play for the moment. I think there's a lot more there, but I think the big points I've
Yeah,
hit.
yeah. I mean, there's a few. I mean, like little other little details that are interesting. Like just all the time spent on like, hey, let me show you this recorder I got here. It's a great hobby I've got. Like
That
when
was funny.
it's like that was good because it showed like okay, here's a very materialistic kind of person who's like just interested in gadgets. Um,
Question, as a composer, I have mixed feelings about this. How did you feel about the use of music in the play?
well, basically, it's sure. Basically, all I have to say
Okay.
is sure. Is like, yeah, like if it, I'd have to actually see the music to believe in the music, and I think it's good. I thought it was fine, like talking about like, oh, this little, tune comes up, but I don't know what that tune is. I think someone was like, there's like big crashing sound or something, or
Yeah.
tumultuous music, whatever. It's like, okay, that's good, like to be focusing on that, but it's weird to describe music in this very abstract fashion. It
It's helpful
always,
though because it gives you a little bit of freedom as a director.
yeah. So I would just say like, yeah, I hope they order a good soundtrack. Um, that's basically all you can really do about it. With the music, I mean, I feel. Let's see, what was another? Oh, well, Tennessee Williams in The Streetcar Named Desire did that,
Yeah.
but I feel like it was better there because the leitmotif was just so clear what was going on.
Yeah, here it's a little bit more complicated or tricky to execute because music here is a signifier to the past. It's like a window into another world. It's not just signifying a character, even it's signifying the whole ideology and beliefs of that character, the
It's
ethos of them.
it was a little bit. I guess the problem is I didn't really get a very clear sense of the leitmotif of like, okay, what specifically is this idea you're trying to evoke when you're playing that food? It's like, okay, something about the father who was like make things and sell them, and but it just wasn't very well developed on that level. Actually, I just want to say like, and this is like just changing topics, but I just realized that like we've read these like three big American plays of Streetcar Named Desire, Long Day's Journey to Night, and now Death of a Salesman. And all three of them are dealing with mental illness and have like musical sub themes or something. No, not in Long Day's Journey to Night, but all of them have significant quantity of mental illness there. Just sort of a funny thing that like is a common aspect.
Um, we should do Edward Albee next and make it really crazy.
Uh,
Not next, but at some point, because
yeah, this is an
I think that's an
excellence.
important point. But I also think that we should table that point and then in like
Yeah.
a year come back to it after having read like 10 more plays.
No, no, yeah, I just it's just something notable to me of like, like this is all sort of you got sort of characters who are going off the rocker, in all of them. There's nothing really more important to say that than yeah, the 40s. Um,
American, it's like some a South Korean person is like, well, I really enjoyed visiting America. Y'all are crazy, but and it's like, yeah, it's a little crazy in America at times. It's a little wily. There's more there for the future, I think.
yeah. What is Asia? What? I'm sorry.
We should read a bunch of Japanese no plays and then ask the question. Actually, we should read some Japanese no plays at some point. So,
Yeah,
but
that would be. Oh God, that would.
it's
What
going to
the?
be really hard because it's a dense classical literature that is going to be all over the place. But we did one and we got through it. So,
It's like I feel like for that, it's also like I don't know. Like, do they have masks? They use masks just like the Greeks
uh,
did. It's like, oh God, I have to imagine that. That's a different. I
well,
don't.
and they're all gonna mean different things, and we're not gonna always.
Okay, well, actually, that's encouraging. That's encouraging that it's like, you know what, the Greeks are doing that, and we're fine understanding the Greeks. We can get what these Japanese are about. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have an optimistic sense. Otherwise, I wouldn't be reading other countries' stuff.
yeah.
Because I'd just be like, well. Who knows what it means? Turns page. At least I'm smart. Or
At least I'm.
it's like, oh yeah, what was that play about? The tale, or what was that book about? The Tale of Genji. Who knows? But I read it. All right,
Oh,
Ray, that was
I
really
just have
fun.
to say no. Before
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do that, I just have to say like that's the terror that like I face with a lot of literature is like, oh, like we were at Sound, we're in Sound of Fury. Like at the end of it, like I had this like sort of fear of like at the end of it, all I'm gonna say is yes, my eyes passed over the words a lot. Um,
Yeah.
like I do have that fear of like, oh, I'm not gonna get shit out of this. But I did, and I do, and
Yeah, no, we're doing great. We're not. I mean, obviously with this one's
no, yeah, this
obviously
one's
high
straightforward.
school.
I mean, the thing is about this. This is like this is just a fun one.
It was
Like,
great. Yeah.
so
All
yeah,
right, Ray, well, this was super fun. Thanks for doing this one with me.
yeah. Thanks for. I've been picking too many of these. I feel like, but we'll do the
The
man who
man
was
who was
Thursday.
Thursday night.
We'll do
Yeah,
the
it's
man who
gonna be
was
great.
Thursday.
I've
Like,
been recommended G.K. Chesterton by, well, one person, but a lot of times it was Anna.
yeah,
So I'm
you
ready
know,
for. I'm excited for it. All right.
I won't judge the hell out of her if it's bad.
I
Um,
think we should. All right.
all right, all right.
Bye.
Bye.